Today we get the opportunity to make a bracelet like this one that you see here. It's going to be a clay piece that we're going to create using our original designs, and then we will make it into a bracelet or a necklace by looping a yarn or piece of string through this. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with this piece of clay. You need to work it in your hands back and forth. This is squeezing the clay, packing it on the inside, the middle. We don't have to really worry about making a perfect ball. We're just squeezing it back and forth, making sure there's no cracks on the inside. The kind of clay that we're using today is air dry clay. This is Crayola air dry clay. It is not like normal clay. Normal clay you would have to take and fire in an oven. So your oven at home gets up to maybe 500 degrees, and the oven that you would bake a real piece of clay in is called a kiln. The kiln gets up to over 2,000 degrees. A high fire would be about 2,000 degrees, and it would make the clay hard. However, we're just going to be letting ours dry out using the air, and it hardens up just using the air. Ours will be hard enough without having to bake it in the oven. However, if you were using a kiln, you would have to let it dry out to get bone dry, and then you would fire it in the oven, and then you would glaze it with a glaze, which is a type of glass that you would brush onto it, and then you put it back in the kiln to melt the glass onto your clay piece. However, since this is air dry clay, we will just be painting ours using watercolors. It will look something like this or this piece here. What we're going to do once we have a good ball is we are going to press it onto our table. So we will take this piece here and we're going to press it flat onto our table. It does not need to be super thin, but it also doesn't need to be really thick. So if yours looks like this and it's really thick, that's too thick. I don't want to carry something around that's that thick on my wrist. You can see the one on my wrist is quite a bit thinner, but it's also not super thin. So if I was to, I'll get one side here super thin. If I was to get one that's, really, really thin, that's not good. I want the middle to be even all the way around the middle. Now that I have my piece, kind of thick and kind of thin, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to peel it up from the desk because it's kind of stuck to the desk. I'm going to peel it up. Then I'm going to put it on my paper that has my name, teacher name, and chair number on it. So I have my name, my teacher name, and my chair number on my piece of paper, and I've put my piece of clay there. My clay won't stick to the paper as bad as it sticks to the desk. I'm going to make a design out of this. It could be a triangle like this, or it could be a more square shape. It could be an oval or a rectangle like the one I'm wearing here. The way I do this is I'm going to use my ruler to press down into it and cut off that section. This is now part that I'm not using. Then I will press here and cut off another piece. If I was making a triangle, obviously I would have left it wider and done them at an angle. But now I have a very long rectangle. But this rectangle is way too long to fit on my wrist. You don't want to make a piece that's really big, because if you make a piece that's really big, it's too big. It would look ridiculous wearing it on my wrist. This is way too big. I don't need a piece that's as big as my hand. You can make a piece that is small or medium size like this, or even if you wanted to, you can make a little tiny piece. Today we're just going to be making two pieces, just two. So the extra clay that we use, we will set aside and we'll repack it. So we'll repack this, we'll make a second one, and then the extra clay from here you will bring to me so that I could save it for another class. You do not need to use all of this clay. We'll just be using a little bit. I'm going to test to see if this would fit on my wrist, and it's probably a little big, and it's probably even a little thick, but that's fine. I'm going to thin it out just a little bit here by pressing it down. And then I can make it smaller. And I think actually I'm gonna make this more square shape for this one. There is two different ways you could design your piece once we get to this point. We have our shape, we've pressed it down. There's two different ways I could design this. One way is I could take the small toothpick and I can make an original design by pulling it at an angle. So I have my toothpick almost sideways and I'm pulling it across this. I could also poke it to make holes like this, or I could even pull in different directions to make different thicknesses and widths of my piece. Now remember, while you're designing this, we're gonna have to put a hole in it to be able to put a piece of yarn through it. So the hole is used because we'll put a piece of yarn through one end and out the other if we're making a bracelet. And so you can see it goes through one hole and out the other hole so that we can tie it on as a bracelet. Or if you're making a necklace, it might only need one hole so that it just dangles like this. So this is the necklace. Remember, you don't want it to be too big though. So this one, I think I'll leave for a bracelet. So I will make two holes here, which is gonna mess up some of my design. I gotta think about that when I'm making my design. This one, I'll just have one hole, just like this. The other way we can make a design is we could take a texture pad like this one, and we'll take it and we'll press it down. Kind of hard, not really hard to smash it, but kind of hard. And when I peel it up, it might stick to the texture pad like this. Then I'm going to peel it off. Now, I'm going to need my name, or if it's really small, just my initials on the back of this so that I know it's mine if it falls off the paper. I probably should have done this first, but if you forgot like I did, it's okay to put your initials or name on the back afterwards. Put my first letter of my first name and the first letter of my last name. I'm gonna do that on this one as well. I'm just using the toothpick. It's okay, just have to be soft when I turn it over. Okay, this piece, I can see the hole kind of disappeared, so I need to remake the hole for this piece. If you're doing a texture, you can probably make the hole after you do the texture. After we're done, we will paint this using watercolors. Now, not today because right now it's wet, so it needs to dry for a day before we could paint it so that it'll get dry and hard. Then, next time we come back to art class, we will paint this piece so that we can string a yarn through it after that. If you have a longer piece or a bigger piece like this one, and it might need to curve a little bit, before you bring it to me, you will curve it on your wrist, and look, it kind of keeps that form. It kind of holds it. It holds that little bit of a curve. So if yours is a bigger piece, you might want to curve it to your wrist. When you bring this to me to put in the drying rack, you're going to put your pieces spread out towards the middle like this. It needs to have your name, teacher name, and chair number, and you're gonna leave it on your paper and bring it to me to put it in the drying rack. If you used a texture pad, you need to wash your texture pad and dry it off before putting it back. If you're finished, you also need to wash your ruler and then dry it off and put it back. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I hope you never stop creating. Have fun.